things you look at change.
What exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. The universe is a celebration. It's a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wowee.
For those of us seeking a life of meaning and purpose, capturing fulfillment in every moment of now, seeking the truths of our reality so we can live this life to its fullest. This is the Live This Life podcast. And I'm your host, E. Cummings. I'm here to inspire you to ask yourself the question every day. Are you living? Or are you killing time? What's going on, everybody? Today, I've got an amazing guest on today's episode. He is, in my opinion, the king of conspiracies, which I prefer to call critical thinking instead of conspiracy theories. But I would say he is the poster child for not taking anything on surface value. This guy does his research on everything. You'll see as we dive into the episodes today, and after this episode is over, you dive into some of the stuff that this guy does on a regular basis. But he is a brilliant mind. I am honored to have him on the show. Faust Checho from the Far Out with Faust podcast. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you for the wonderful intro, and I appreciate the kind words.
I'm excited to have you on here because I am, of all the podcasts that I listen to, I would say yours is right up there in like the top three. I kind of dive into someone's and I just kind of let it go on repeat for a little while and then move on, to another one for a little while, and I'll dive back into yours. So it's one of those shows that I dive into a lot, and you do a fantastic job and you do your research. So I know when people have genuinely got the knowledge, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thank you, bro. If you're going to come with it, you got to come correct, so people can smell bullshit. I mean, I say that even as I marvel at the amount of bullshit we've all been fed, but it's like, it is what it is, but it's awesome to be able to streamline information for people and to have them, really dive into it and see it in a new light. So I enjoy it, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you definitely cut from my cloth. You're definitely part of the tribe that I like to follow because, you dive into the stuff that is truth. I feel like that's so fundamental, like we were talking about before I hit record on the microphone. But also you got, the spiritual side to you. You dive deep into just kind of like everything about life. So that balance of those kinds of things are definitely, something that's attracted me to listening to your show and want to get you on here because, like I said, you got a wealth of knowledge, man.
Thank you, brother. It's crazy how the spiritual community and the quote, the truther community intersect. Yeah. And I always marvel at that too, but like I always tell people, it's like, when you begin to see more and feel more and experience more and start to see some of the wool that's been pulled over your eyes, you're able to see more of everything. So it's like, yeah, oh my God, has that been going on? Like when the fuck, it's shocking, it's surprising, but the more you can kind of unravel the old programming, heal from old traumas, you expand your consciousness, and you start to see more of what's actually happening. And if you're interested, like I am, you end up, in a complete and total blackout rabbit hole, one after the next, being like, oh, and it just, it really never ends on some of these things that I go into. I'm like, my God, it's crazy.
Like you wonder if there ever is an end to the rabbit hole. It's like you think enough about a subject. Like I thought I knew a lot about the JFK stuff before I listened to a recent episode that you did that I'm going to link in the show notes to this episode. It does a part 1 and a part 2, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. But man, I thought I kind of knew it. It was like the first conspiracy theory that I remember when Oliver Stone's movie?
Oliver Stone.
Yeah. That movie, like I was in my teens when it first came out, and it was like what really kind of like, wow, okay, it's not what we were given the narrative of all these years, like what our parents thought. And I dove into it from then. And then this episode you put out recently with all these facts from all these different angles, it's like, whoa, I had to pause at a certain time, then do some research on it. And of course, you make the mistake of putting something into Google, and you're not going to find the answer right away in Google. If people aren't aware of that right now, it's like you got to go through alternative search engines or whatever. But man, some of the rabbit holes you dug down on that one, it's like, it's never going to end.
No, it's because it's ongoing. You know, I mean, I feel like eventually there'll be no one left alive to hold accountable, not even, you know, in legacy terms, as far as being damaged by, you know, and then maybe, you know, if the systems of authority and power are still in place, they'll allow information to come out that truly shows who's responsible. Because, you know, the thing about the JFK movie is, and the reason why it was, you know, kind of allowed to flourish and then won Academy Award, I think it was nominated for an insane amount of Academy Awards, is because, well, first and foremost, Oliver Stone was pressured to change the narrative to point the finger at the military industrial complex instead of the CIA. And he knew damn well it was the CIA, but the CIA has extreme influence over Hollywood. I mean, enormous pressure they can put. And so he sold out. And one of the reasons why this guy who I have the utmost respect for, incredible lawyer and patriot, fearless. I mean, you know, as fearless as someone can be in the face of these conspiring forces. You know, he wrote many books on this, and you know, since the day that it happened, he has been on the front line with his. You know, he made the first documentary that came out. That I think it was what was it called? Rush to Judgment.
Yeah,
like literally like 2 years after the you know, he just compiled all the testimony, all the eyewitness testimony that the Warren Commission decided that was unimportant. And like, you're like, oh my God, just this testimony alone obliterates the entire Warren Commission. And that's why they didn't allow it in.
Yeah.
So it's like, but Oliver Stone and this cat, Mark Lane, his name is, they weren't on speaking terms, because as much as Mark respected the movie, Mark knew what the original screenplay said, and he knew that Oliver caved into these pressures. And then Oliver, you know, they had a kind of a falling out, and so they wouldn't speak together. Oliver wouldn't speak when Mark was speaking about JFK, for whatever reasons, you know, ego reasons. But Oliver had good intentions, and what came from that movie was a reopening of the case. If you notice, that movie, as great as it is, it doesn't give you any idea of who's truly responsible. Right. You know, the shadowy military industrial complex, which of course they had a hand in it, and they were one of the pressures, you know, being put to knock JFK off, because the United States wants war, and we wanted war in Vietnam. We wanted it all out. And since they took out JFK, Lyndon Johnson, one of the first things he did was pass the War Powers Act, which basically gives the United States, the president, permission to commit acts of war without votes from the Congress, without approval, without fucking anything, which is exactly what's going on today.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have, they could have never got that kind of signature or act to pass from JFK, but Lyndon Johnson was a fucking military industrial shill.
Yeah.
So, it's like they wanted war in Vietnam, but that's not who really is responsible for, what went on. They don't implicate anyone, but they did allow Congress pushed a thing that allowed everything to be reopened and reexamined, and demanded all these papers come out, which of course many of them did, and that actually allowed a lot of work to be done to bring much more truth to the, oh my God, look what this, all the records about the assassination were allowed to come out. And so even though they allowed this movie to be made, which misdirected who was responsible, but still, allowed the American people what they already suspected to kind of confirm, like, fucking A, we didn't get the whole story. It ended up kind of biting them in the ass, because they formed another review board and everything was re-examined, and all the investigators went back to work with the new information, and have since then really put the final pieces of the puzzle together thanks to that. So I'm always fascinated by the things that they think are going to help keep them exonerated, and how the spirit of people and the American spirit, and it's just our nature. We take what we can and we turn it into something that's for our positive, for the positive of society. So, you know, that did come of it. That's all good news.
And that can snowball too. You know, it's who knows where that will lead in the future. And if anything, it's opened up people's minds. I mean, that movie, you know, and we'll dive into it in a few minutes because I want to do my cheesy guest question that I ask of everybody. No, we're diving in. I like, we've got so much to talk about. So, you know, if you got to at a certain point this episode's going on for a long time, just do like a hat tip or something like that. Like, hey, Heath, cut it off. We got to move. Okay. No, but I do ask everybody their own views of the world and of life. And I ask a typical cheesy question of pretty much everybody that comes on here. But what does it mean to live your best life, according to Faust?
Oh, I love that question. I think I'm a big fan of cheesy questions because they're not asked often enough today.
Yeah.
So, you know, what that means to me is, and what it has meant for me, for my evolution, and the reason why I'm sitting here talking to you right now, and not, I would say, you know, spinning my wheels at something much more superficial in this life, you know, is at one point in time in my life, I realized that I was operating from a lot of faulty code, you know, from a lot of programs that weren't even my own, you know, that came from, and I would learn this after this realization, that came from a lot of, you know, typical childhood trauma and abuse. And I wanted to change my behavior. I wanted to change how I felt about myself because I was filled with self-loathing. You know, I hated the pattern I was stuck in. And I had this great big fortress built over my heart. Like I literally had been physiologically conditioned not to feel vulnerable, which kept me from feeling, you know, love and all those other emotions that are so important to happiness and humanity. And so through, you know, a lot of soul searching and different therapies and eventually, you know, having struggled, being, you know, in a true struggle with addiction and addictive behaviors, I found the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I learned how to meditate under his tutelage, and that really allowed me to bring those unconscious programs to the forefront, and then start to change the programming. Because the thing about, you know, our subconscious programs is they're running the show, whether we realize it or not. You know, 99% of everything we do every day is similar to what we did the day before and the day before that. And that's because, you know, we're human beings, and this is how we are. You know, we run, and they base computers off neural networks for a reason. That's why they became advanced. But so long story somewhat shorter, I was an actor and a filmmaker for 20 years. And I was an actor who I could, you know, the moment I felt vulnerable in my work and in my life, of course, it was like fucking Iron Man, dude. It was like I didn't have to think about like, oh, I don't want people to see me like this. No. It was automatic. It was absolutely, you know, like involuntary. The moment I felt vulnerable, everything shut down, and it would be, that feeling was whisked away as fast as it came, and I was left feeling empty and fucked up, and you know, like it's like not being able to cry. You know what I mean? It's like all that builds up, and it's got to go somewhere. All that energy has to go somewhere, and that's why, you know, people end up with these addictions, and they end up with problems because there has to be an outlet, but that's not the healthiest most of the time, unless the addiction is like, you know, exercise and meditation, right, and you can find a way to make it healthy. But so I had a great teacher who told me, dude, he didn't say dude, but he said, you need to find out why you have Fort Knox built over your heart. And I was like, yeah, where do I start? You know? And, you know, I just thought I was like everyone else. I didn't understand what a functional family was. I didn't understand what abuse was. I just thought I was from a typical kind of Italian American family, and that, you know, if you had good parents, then they let you know it by keeping you in line and beating the shit out of you once in a while. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I thought. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. That's the paradox. So, you know, I realized that my childhood was not exactly what I thought it was, and that, you know, let's just say that there was not much emotional role modeling going on. That's putting it mildly. And so I went on this mission, right? I needed to open my heart. How do you do that? How do you do that? I had a problem that was not just metaphysical; it was physical. I could not, you know, like, I couldn't feel like and so I had two ways to go about this, and I was doing all kinds of stuff, and I found Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and I began to learn to open my heart in meditation, and I began to practice, opening it in my life, allowing myself to be vulnerable, you know, even though everything in me wants to shut down, and I reconditioned myself into an open-hearted state, you know, which involved a lot of healing, you know, and so that took me down a very spiritual path. You know, when I started out doing that, it was to become this phenomenal, dynamic Marlon Brando type actor. That's why I thought I was trying to heal, which of course I know I look back on now and I have to laugh at it, because what I was really doing was trying to find myself to be a better man, a better husband, you know, a better father. I have two beautiful children who need, you know, a father who can be emotionally available for them, and not just, you know, in anger. But man, you know, it all happened for me in great timing. And then, you know, my interest in that industry started to wane, and then 2020 happened, and me and that industry, for the most part, are very happily divorced. It's really hard for me to kind of look at that industry and think, my God, I spent so much time in that fucking fickle, superficial world. But it brought me to where I am, and I'm very happy with who I am. You know, we're always improving, and I'm always trying to embody that. But that to me is a list. To answer your question specifically, besides kind of, you know, give your listeners an idea of who I am and how I got here, we have this list, right, of who we want to be, and all the things that person embodies as they walk around in their life. You know, maybe that person who you want to be is more patient, is more compassionate, you know, is more loving with their family, whatever it is on that list, more successful, you know. And then there's who you are right now, and you got to really be honest with yourself. You know, I'm not as patient as I can be. You know, I do these things every day. That doesn't help me. I have a bad habit of forecasting the worst case scenarios, whatever it is. There's this list and there's this list, right? You want to make this list one. You know, you want to bring this list together. And that's what I did. You know, I went through this list, and slowly but surely I replaced it with this list of who I am. And I think that's what it means to me to live your best life, to be embodied in your best self. You know, that's what I would say.
Embodied in your best self. That's a great answer. I mean, it's definitely like the road that gets us to wherever we're at, whenever we get to like the level of understanding where we actually start to like ourselves. Like, I think that's something that so many people are missing in their lives. And, you know, like, granted, everybody can have something they don't like about themselves. I'm still growing. You know, I've been on this, like, a similar path, like what you're talking about myself, for what is it, 2024. So, I mean, that's on its way to 7 or 8 years that I've been really like entrenched in a lot of the same stuff like you're talking about. Joe Dispenza's work is what motivated this podcast big time. And, you know, people see people like you, they see people like me, and, you know, they're thinking like, man, I just want to get to that place where I'm happy where I'm at too. And it's like, well, just keep going. Like, that's all you got to do is just keep on going. I can't tell you how long it's going to be, because in 2016, if you told me it was going to take me 8 years, I'd be like, what, 8 years? I gotta be in this mindset for 8 years. Like, I'm not going to reach that point. It's like, it's a slow boil. You eventually get there, and it just eventually happens where you're in a conversation with somebody and you just realize you're like, wow, I'm light years away from where I was. And like you're saying, you didn't, you know, you're kind of you say you ashamed of that's almost ashamed, but like, you're like, man, why would I take a superficial path to get to this place? It's like, it was all part of the lessons you had to learn in the Earth School. You know, it's like the reason you came here.
Exactly. And, you know, you get to a place where you can't help but you have a lot of love for the person you were, even if they were doing, you know, whatever they were doing, you had to move through that person and become who you are. It sounds so cliche, but it's true, you know. So I just, in general, I just look at that industry and I'm like, oh my God, you know, it's crazy, but it is.
There are good people in it though.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And like you said, self-love, that's the end all be all, man. People don't realize that everything that they're trying to do comes back to that, you know, and then you tell them that and they're like, oh God, you know, like, you're like, listen, you know, but everything else that you're doing, you may not even realize it, but it's all going to come back to you. It's all going to come back to how much can you love yourself, you know, because everything else that you're doing is really, you're putting the horse before the cart. And that's what people don't realize. It's the journey is self-love, because that's how you can truly love others. That's the only way you can truly love others.
Absolutely.
So you got to be willing to help yourself and not think, oh, that's just selfish of me, or I should be doing this for someone else. You have to start putting you first, you know.
Definitely. So what got you actually into podcasting? How long have you been doing the show that you're on now? Have you ever done one before that one?
So I was working on a movie in 2020, and I was just kind of hired to host the show called The Last Supper. Fantastic idea for a show. Maybe we'll do it one day. But it was going to be like almost like an Anthony Bourdain meets the Actors Studio, where I go around and I ask gurus 10 questions, and whatever they would eat for their final meal on the planet, that's what we'll both eat for these questions, right? And then, you know, the pandemic was put into effect and got enough traction where they had their little global exercise for us, and everything was shut down. So I had this film that, you know, we had $10 million. No, I made like 5 independent films of varying budgets, but all, you know, well under $500,000. And some of them did really good. And so of course now we have a film where people are just coming out of the woodwork to give us money for it, and we're going to shoot it. And I'm working with this awesome writer who is very spiritual, and kind of my worlds are merging, right? And I love it. It's so cool to see and be a part of this screenplay we're going to do that is about consciousness, and that has this incredible story arc, and that, you know, like when it was written back in like 2005, Plan B paid $1 million for it, which is Brad Pitt's company. And then they sat on it for 10 years. Then Tom Cruise picked it up. He sat on it 5 years. Eventually it reverted back to the screenwriter and to me and this other producer. And then everything got shut down. Okay. So we're sitting around, we went from like, you know, planning this production to sitting around being stuck. And so my friend, he's a dear friend now, he was like, we got to fucking do something. Let's do a podcast. And I was like, all right, everyone's doing a podcast, but okay, we can do a podcast. He was like, yeah, we're going to do a podcast. He was like, you're going to fucking host it. And I'm like, what? I'm going to host it. He was like, yeah, man, I'm a writer and a director. I don't hang out in front of the camera. Okay. I'm like, oh, okay, then I can host it. I was like, but I've never done it before. He's like, you're going to be fucking great. Don't worry about it. And he was like, I'll get you guests. He's like, you love Bashar, right? I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I love Bashar. I was like, I have a whole library of his videos. He was like, Bashar's my friend, okay? Daryl. I was like, I know his real name's Daryl. He was like, he'll be one of your first guests. I was like, get the fuck out of here, really? And he was like, absolutely, absolutely. I'll make the call. And then before I fucking know it, I'm sitting there, and I've got a camera, and we set it up, and I'm talking to one of my favorite spiritual teachers at the time, Daryl Anka, on my podcast. And that's how it all got started.
It's amazing. It's amazing that it pushes you down a road that you never expected to be on, and you find out like, yeah, this is the place I was supposed to be the whole time, But
exactly.
It's like a symphony, man. It unfolds, and it's a beautiful song afterwards. So it's cool stuff. So what?
Yeah, bro.
Were you always sort of into conspiracies? Like, was this something that you had from childhood times? I mean, what really like fired you up into the conspiracy world?
Oh man, so I don't know if I was ever big into them. I guess I didn't realize there were so many.
It's true.
To be so into them, but I mean, it happened slowly. I think it was like I tell people, it's like when the blinders come off, you're like, oh wow, it's so beautiful. Like I had no idea the world was painted with all these beautiful colors, and then you kind of eventually go from, and then you swing over here, and you're like, what the fuck is going on over there? My God, has that been there the whole time? Say it ain't so. It can't be. And then you're kind of like, oh boy, this is a whole new world. And so I feel like anyone who has begun to allow the pond to settle, and really see into themselves, then when you look out with new eyes, and you start to see more of the world. And that world is infinitely more beautiful and filled with joy and all these emotions that you've freed in yourself that maybe you didn't have before. But it's also like, oh my God, can it be that toxic? Can it be that corrupt? Can this be going on? Things start to stick out more than they did before, for better or for worse. And so it fascinates me, and it's in my nature to see the paradox of that, the yin and the yang, the dual sides of reality, and so I got to point it out because it blows my mind. And I had no idea that the things that we've been fed in our history classes and on, recent events, they're just complete fabrications. There's really nothing true about them. They're as made up as a fairy tale, as a fucking totally. I mean, even fiction books usually come from some iota of truth.
Right.
And most of the bullshit we've been fed about the events that have shaped our society are not rooted in any iota of truth. They're completely fabrications made up by the state. And I look at the effect that it has on our society, and its detriment, is virtually, it's indescribable. It's so vast. It's so big. And people don't know. And that bothers me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if people knew the truth about JFK, if people knew the truth about 9/11, then when October 7th came around, they would have been like, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Come on. Oh, yeah, Israel was surprise attacked. Good one. Yeah. Come on. Just like America was surprise attacked on 9/11. Get the give it a rest, dudes. Give it a rest. We know you fucking did it yourselves.
Yeah.
This is bullshit. But like Pavlov and his dogs, they blow the fucking whistle. And, there's a certain part of society that is going to be triggered into the response they want. And they do it over and over because that part of society is unaware of the truth and their own programming. And those two things mean a lot to me. And I see that much to our detriment, that society is lacking the information they would need even to try to form make an informed decision about what's happening in the world. So that's kind of how I got to where I am and why I'm passionate about it.
I mean, it's true. It's interesting to watch when people do start to sort of open their minds up to a whole bunch of different possibilities in the world. I'm fascinated in human psychology. Like, I'm thinking in years to come, psychology, like studying psychology is going to be something that I definitely want to dive into. I've done it a little bit over the years, but like formal studies into psychology, I don't know where you take that kind of thing as far as the profession goes, but it's something that really fascinates me. And the psychology behind cognitive dissonance is a huge one. And the social conditioning that happens when you have something that comes up from, like, we'll dive into a whole bunch of things, but like we're already talking about the JFK stuff. And when someone just questions the narrative, especially now with all the stuff that's come out over all these decades, all these different pieces of the puzzle that have sprung out of people's deathbed confessions and everything else, it eventually, people almost can't comprehend it. They can't understand it. And the society has been so conditioned to call people conspiracy theorists and demonize the thought at all and completely dismiss it. It's just that aspect in and of itself of the way that the people who tried to manipulate that behavior out of human society, the way that they did it and how successful it was, that in and of itself fascinates me. And I think you can only get to a point of fascination rather than just disgust or disdain for like your fellow man. I think you can only get to the point of fascination when you see them doing these things and you see something else pop up and you see these different plans get rolled into place that someone's talked about it years ago. Like, hey, eventually, guys, they're going to be doing this thing, Project Bluebeam. They're going to start talking about aliens, and all of a sudden some shit's going to go down, but it's never really going to go down right in front of you. Like, you're never going to be able to reach out and touch a freaking crashed craft like Will Smith was able to jump on top of one and pull an alien. Like, you're never going to be able to see that, but you're going to see it elsewhere. You know, when all of those plans eventually come to fruition and you see it unfold, and you're like, wow, this was fascinating. Like, they're really good at doing this shit that they do to manipulate the world around them. You can almost look at it from a sense of sort of like wonder. And I wouldn't even say I admire it, but it's like, oh man, they're actually getting really good and efficient at this.
Dude, it's, I mean, they are, but it like everything else, it's, you know, it can't hold up because they need a narrative that the public will accept.
Yeah.
And you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole every time. And so the truth comes out because the fucking peg is not round. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, the peg is not square. What did I say? Round peg, square hole. Yeah, the peg is not square. So it's never going to fit. You're going to have to keep smashing it in and telling people, look how good it fits.
Yeah.
And people are going to be, but it doesn't fit. But if you look at it really from this angle, it fits. No, it doesn't fit in any way. It makes no sense whatsoever what you're saying. Moving on. Next question.
Let us get a few more experts to say how the peg fits. We'll line them all up on the stage.
And they've been doing that, you know, in one iteration or the next for as long as these three-letter agencies have been formed, you know. And there's a human inclination to go along with what is being accepted by society. That is kind of ingrained in our DNA, and they know that in more ways than most of the public does, and they know how to manipulate that aspect of ourselves. You research JFK, and you can watch as the testimony. You know, these dudes are as Dallas, Texas as it comes. They you know, it's in every fiber of their being. And one guy, I watched his testimony, you know, he went on for 10 minutes. How there is no way. I was right by that knoll and I heard that shot. And I watched a police officer draw his gun and run up that knoll. But now I know that it couldn't have come from the knoll because they told me it had to come from and you're just like, I'm like, what the fuck? Why you let them tell you anything? You just said for fucking 20 minutes how there was no way. But now, since the FBI had words with you, now you know that you were wrong. No, you were right, man. You know, don't believe your eyes and ears. That is the ongoing fucking theme that they need to convince people over and over of. Don't believe what you saw and what you heard. Believe what the science, believe what the experts say. You know, in 1963, it was, we have to have faith. Walter Cronkite, fucking well-known, well-established fucking Mason cog in the fucking CIA ass in the media. We have to have faith in our establishment. You know, like, you know, when the media is bantering around words like faith in government, you know that they're fucking desperate for people not to storm the castle and revolt. But that,
Yeah,
of
be a
course,
good
was going
American.
on.
Be a good
Yeah,
American and have faith.
and you saw the same thing happen with 9/11.
Yeah.
You saw, even people like Tucker Carlson being very disturbed and upset by others who were coming forward and saying, look, this is not what it adds up to be, and you see him kind of getting very upset, and his sense of loyalty to his country, is obviously riled by these people who are trying to tell him what I'm sure now he understands and can see and has learned about, since he's freed himself from the establishment and the legacy media. But, if you ask him now what went on in 9/11, I'm sure he'll tell you something really rotten, but back then he was doing what he was well programmed to do. And he was kind of picking this poor guy apart. And he was like, are you saying that our government? And the guy's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, and it's just amazing, to see how people evolve and wake up and realize that the fucking world is not what they were told, and I don't hold it against Tucker. He was one of the many people who was convinced of the government's narrative, which is absurd.
It is. It's a hard one to swallow. Like that, I think that one out of all of them is probably one of the hardest ones to swallow. And it's like I've approached it with an open mind and listened to. I mean, the engineers alone. When you hear all of these engineers who have no agenda other than just the physics, the science. Everyone's talking about the science of what happened that day, and that is literally impossible for 3 buildings that day to fall, because people who don't look into it don't realize there was a 3rd building, and
it was impossible for any of those.
Yeah,
the twin towers could have been hit by fucking 6 or 7 of those jets, and they would not have fallen.
Yep,
they would not have fallen. There's no fucking way whatsoever. In fact, there was someone on the 84th floor who remembers on impact looking at his desk. He remembers what he was writing. He was composing an email, and he said that on the 84th floor, the plane hit, and even that close to the impact, he said, I remember looking down, and the picture of my family was undisturbed. My pens were undisturbed. Everything was still on my desk, and in fact, my computer was still working because the email was still waiting for me to finish. So when I tell you that those buildings were built to absolutely unequivocally survive really any those planes were not built. They fall apart. I mean, a fucking pigeon could wreck a plane.
Yeah.
You see the damage of pigeon. So they would continue to break on that incredibly well built steel structure until the cows came home. You could not sink a 110-story skyscraper with any number of planes.
Yeah.
You could make a fire show. You can make it go boom, because every time the jet fuel hits, the kerosene is going to ignite. It's going to create a big old show. And then you have the office, you have whatever fire is left contained from that, initial whoosh. That's it.
Right.
So you would have had an office fire on each and every of the floors that were hit. So about 2 floors per plane. That's nothing that would never compromise the structure of those buildings. Just fact. You need magic science to do that, which is what they came up with.
We have magic science. I mean, we have the magic bullet. You did a great job outlining the one with JFK. Before we dive, I'd like to dive into the JFK stuff, because that's fresh on my mind. And that was, like I said, that was one of the first ones. And I think it's probably one of the biggest ones that I think most people are willing to accept. But if you had to rate the top 3 conspiracies of all of human history, I mean, what would your top 3 be? And if you have to expand it to maybe 5, what would your top 5? Not just your favorites, but the ones that were literally the biggest lies, the most impactful, the ones that just have, it was the complexity of it, everything, just something that just completely changes the course of human history.
Well, very unpopular way to start the answer to this, probably to some of your listeners, but I think that the religious hijacking of society that came about because at that time religion was government.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There was no separation. And so, religion started out as a spiritual undertaking, people are like, well, you don't believe in Jesus? I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? I believe in Jesus. I talk to him all the time. He's amazing. You can believe in Jesus and and Christ and God and the things that these beings truly espoused, and also not buy into the dogma that was put forth to control the masses, and inspire fear in them and give them a reason to fucking pay taxes.
Yeah.
Because if you understand that you're immortal and that death is but another birth, death is truly an illusion, there is no death, then why the fuck would you pay taxes to the emperor?
Yeah.
Why would you be afraid of his guards?
Yeah.
How are they going to manage you if you aren't afraid to die? They can't.
And if you disobey that guy, God's not going to let you through the door, like stuff like that. I know exactly what you're saying.
So religion, I think, was, of all the conspiracies, that has probably done the most damage and set the stage for, these other iterations of control and authority. So that would be number one, and then I think in more recent times, it's like the biggest con and conspiracy that I see that has, done and set the stage for the most damage being done to people in the world is and it goes back before the Federal Reserve, but the central bank debt system that was put into place to enslave people and country alike. America was founded as an answer to that, but then succumbed and got conned into the central banking system. So, and that's why everybody and everything in America is in debt, because the system is working exactly the way it's supposed to. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to create debt. You don't have to have a dictatorship and a communist country in order to own that country. All you have to do is own their fucking money supply.
Yeah.
And these bankers, they knew that. And so they worked very diligently to con Congress and form this Federal Reserve, which of course everybody should know by now is not federal. It's no more federal than Federal Express.
Yep.
It's federal in title, but the United States government has a treasury, but we don't use it. We in our Constitution, it says that we should print our money, and that we have the right to loan it to ourselves without interest if we want. Hey, there's a fucking idea. But does the United States do that? No. The United States has sold out to these oligarch, rich bankers, and we've made them, a power unto themselves and allowed them to infiltrate basically every government because of this unholy alliance. So that's got to be in the top 5, right? And then
you're really aware, as far as when the Federal Reserve was created, when its big push actually was, and what major national event, national tragedy that happened that took out some significant opponents to the Federal Reserve's creation.
J.P. Morgan, who owned that ship, who was supposed to be on that ship, just decided, I'm going to skip the maiden voyage of my pride and joy. It's so funny how almost all of these events include someone who could be said to own the place and decided to stay home on the day of the tragedy.
Yeah.
Larry Silverstein. True. He owned the World Trade Center. He went to work every morning on the top floor of the North Tower, every morning since he bought it in that previous July, except for 9/11.
It took a big insurance claim out on it when he first got it too.
Not just any insurance claim, but a total destruction.
Yeah. And didn't go to work that day. and then JP Morgan didn't jump on his big famous ship that hit an iceberg.
That's right.
And everybody who went down on that ship were the people who were trying to stop the Federal Reserve. And when them out of the way.
You tell me this, my friend. Everything we've been taught is fucking complete and utter fantasy. Do you know how hard it is to find a fucking iceberg in the middle of the night in the ocean? Unless you're really looking for one. I mean, like, it's fucking impossible, dude. Yeah. I just came back from a cruise. When you're out in the middle of the ocean, you have to be like a fucking homing missile searching for the iceberg. So there's that, okay? There's the notion that it was an accident. You cannot run a ship into a giant iceberg big enough to crash it by accident. Not if you have eyes, then you would just turn when you fucking saw the thing coming. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the whole notion is preposterous. And then the fact that there were survivors and that the richest people on the fucking boat didn't get on the boats. I mean, like, this is not how the world works. Okay. You know, those people, I'm sure they were hit over the head before it was all said and done. I'm sure it was all planned out. But, you know, the first people who usually get the lifeboats are the people with all the money. Okay. That's how society works. It's like, oh yeah, no, what happened? They were just sleeping in their cabin. They didn't even realize the fucking ship was listing and going down. Give me a break. It's just all fantasy, man. And then, of course, they had their way to the Federal Reserve was able to pass because the people who were holding it up were no longer there. Yeah. So that's a big one. The other one I would say is obviously, you know, dude, the Lusitania, this is a false flag.
Yeah.
So World War
False flags are crazy. The false flags are those conspiracies in and of themselves. I think those are the ones I had the most trouble as far as anger goes, because I just could not believe, and people can research this stuff for themselves, and I encourage them to. The false flags that have gotten us into wars, like the one you're about to talk about, that just got me so angry.
Dude, like I forget, but I'm pretty sure World War One had even more of a death count than World War II. And it all could have been avoided. It was all manipulated. The Lusitania, the Germans sent a wire to the United States and told them they learned of the plans where Lusitania was going to go. They said, do not send that ship here because that is an active war zone. Germany was at war with Britain and the other countries, but they didn't want America to get involved because they were almost done with the war. They were winning, really. And so they sent a wire to go out to the media. They wanted to be on record, and they would be eventually. But J.P. Morgan had bought the fucking telegraph company, and he never put the wire out. And then they pretended that they never got the wire. But the wire said, not only that, but they loaded the fucking shipping truck with civilians so there would be casualties. So they did two things to false flag. You know, they sent the ship exactly where they knew it would be destroyed, and they made sure to put people on it when it was never intended to have people on it. Over and over, that was the catalyst for the World War One, for the Lusitania, right? The catalyst for World War II was for the United States was Pearl Harbor, which everybody who knows anything and has been paying attention knows that complete false flag. Not only had we already been listening to every conversation Japanese military brass was having for fucking months, but our code breakers had cracked the code. We were eavesdropping on everything, but we fucking had people on the inside in the Japanese government trying to goad Japan into an offensive response so that we could then go on, get involved in the war, and they could get the vote. They could get Congress to say, yes, go, because back then there was still a structure in place that allowed the people to decide through Congress whether we were going to actually go to war or not. Yep. And they needed a Pearl Harbor. And so they put those ships out there. They knew that Japan was coming, and they didn't warn them, and they made sure there was people there to get fucking killed over and over. The same thing. Gulf of Tonkin, that was just literally like, if you had a camera on what was going on there, you would see a ship driving around in circles, firing torpedoes at nothing. That was just really like a dog and pony show.
Yeah. But then, like the failed one with Operation Northwoods, and people can look that one up themselves, and that's likely what ended up leading up to JFK's assassination, because it's very well known at this point that the CIA had a huge hand in it. The more information that comes out, the more, recently just declassified documents that implicated that Oswald was a CIA asset, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I mean, even down to Trump, when he was in office, was vowing that he's going to get the files released. And somebody who was an insider who was really close to him said he actually did look at it, and he questioned, he's like, well, what the hell? If you looked at it, why did you not release it to the public? You promised you were going to do this for people. And he said, because if we release that to the public, things will absolutely fall apart. If the public actually knew what happened with that JFK assassination, it would absolutely destroy what we have for a fabric of society in the United States right now. And I guess apparently that's why he didn't release it. But Northwoods was, the false flag that was going to get us into a war with Cuba. And it was disgusting. They were going to put people on a cruise boat. And it was similar to what, Lusitania that got us into World War I. It was almost like a carbon copy, just somewhere else.
And 9/11. They said the other thing we could do is, and this is incredible because this is literally part of their plan, and part of what they used to get us into, the next stage of American conquest was one of the proposals of Operation Northwoods was to take an airline, a commercial airline jet, and it's so crazy because in the words that they used in the proposal of Kennedy, they said something like, "We'll make sure that there are not many people on it, maybe just a few college students." I was like, what the fuck? What? Why do you hate college students so much that you want to just do it? And then we'll do a swap in midair, and the ship that will crash, the airline that will crash won't have anyone on it, but there'll be minimal casualties, and then we'll have and of course JFK was like, no, write down a list. And fucking all 55 fucking proposals of insanity and civilian casualties to get America to go to war and to go to invade Cuba, all for oil, all for positioning to fuck Russia and for oil, but mostly for oil. It's always mostly for oil with the United States. That's what 9/11 was about, in many ways. That the Patriot Act. So I would say that JFK, 9/11. And then, of course, the UFO conspiracy, which is nothing to do with ET and everything to do with the same oligarchs who planned these. The same people who are committing these atrocities are the ones keeping the conspiracies about UFOs, not because they care that you or I know that ET exists and that, in fact, we're related to ET, but so that you don't know how ET got here on a fucking ship that doesn't need oil or gas or anything else.
Yeah.
Because if you had that, then how would they control you? How would they continue to bill you? What would they have to hoard over us? If we don't need energy, we can build anything we want. We can go anywhere we want. We don't have to pay anything to heat our houses or electricity. Everything that they've set up, every industry runs on these same, destructive technologies. And the ship that ET rode in on would make that completely obsolete. So you better believe that is their number one fucking secret, is keeping that technology under wraps, more so than any other conspiracy. That is the biggest one, because without those, with that technology ever sees the light of day, everything collapses. There's no more need for oil. There's no more need for gas. There's all the fake crises and wars that they fight over natural resources. They all go bye-bye. The military-industrial complex, it all falls away. Their entire stranglehold on the global industries. And so that's why that is, that's their biggest conspiracy. And they've had that technology since 1954.
Isn't that crazy? There was a congressman that I saw. I forgot what his name was, and I was actually just trying to find the video because I saved it. I save a lot of the videos that I see that I'm like, this ain't gonna last long, because you can't bookmark stuff anymore. Like my phone is so full of like TikToks and stuff like that are like legitimate news clips and stuff that often get pulled down if you put them in your bookmarks folder. So you go in there and try and look it up again, and it's gone. And sometimes like you can't even you screen record stuff. I've had it happen to me, and I was kind of like losing my mind. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I screen recorded it. Maybe I did it on my iPad rather than my phone, and it's not there. But there's one congressman who goes on, and they're him and another. It was a guy with a very southern accent and a woman that he's working with, and they're like, can you imagine what it would do with the war pigs? It would put them completely out of business, and we wouldn't be sending American boys and girls overseas to die if we had the technology of something that can travel light years. And I'm all about that. Like, I'm all about trying to cancel the whole war machine because we can do better than this. And that's his big mission. You got to wonder how long someone like him stays on that light side. Like, how long is it until he gets Clintoned? Like, how long is it until he gets an unfortunate accident where someone mugs him and shoots him twice in the back of the head and doesn't take his wallet or something? You wonder how long some of those people, the suicide with a double shot in the back of the head. On that subject, have you had any weird shit happen to you where you've had, because
No, man.
you're deep into some of the stuff, and it's like, I think there's so many people out there now, but yeah, I wanted to ask you that question.
I mean, no, listen, I'm not breaking news. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm just sharing information that is out there for other people who are curious. Everything I talk about really has been out in the public for a long time. It's just that most people aren't aware. Yeah. Most people don't have the time to do it. So, I'm not putting their dollars in jeopardy, and therefore I don't think that they give two shits about me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm sharing my opinion and research with people that they could just as easily discover for themselves. Yeah. So I'm not concerned. I also know how to stay focused and set my GPS on a path that I know is going to be bright for me and abundant and filled with wonderful things, and not this kind of bullshit. I try to stay on that path. So,
because definitely the conspiracy train, I know, I want to say it was definitely before COVID. The last like 3 years of that whole thing has been kind of a blur, but I feel like there was just this world of, it's like pre-2020 and post-2020. And I know before 2020, it was definitely a lot of stuff that when you looked into these, it painted a very bleak picture of the world. And I always compare this whole process, a lot of everything you and I've already talked about today, about the metaphors of what you see in the movie The Matrix, especially the first one. The other two are but the first Matrix movie of, people don't want to wake up. That blue pill tastes way too good, like they just keep shoving them in their mouth, and people don't want to know. And you get that whole scene with Cypher where he's like, if I had to choose between this and the Matrix, I'd choose the Matrix, and ignorance is bliss. And he shoves the prime rib in his mouth and stuff. And that is so symbolic of a majority of society. But I feel like there's more people who are sort of waking up, and as time goes on, there's more and more people who aren't going to just accept all of that garbage that they see. The red pill is too tantalizing, and the more time goes on, I feel like more people are just coming around and they're waking up to all this stuff. But the media manipulation and everything else that people see happening, I feel like they're almost beating themselves at their own game because people are waking up to it. There's too much propaganda going on, even with the people who were hard-nosed in a certain direction. I feel like they're actually starting to wake up much more because they see certain things happening and they're like, okay, now this one I can't believe, it's complete bullshit. But what I was saying before about how before 2020, I feel like I had a little bit of a hard time with a lot of stuff because it painted a very dark picture of the world.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like in the Matrix where you just like, oh, hey, we don't wake people up after a certain age because they just can't accept breaking away from the program. Right. And I feel like I was kind of in that stage myself before 2020. And then everything is just landslid afterwards. It's like at this point, I don't even give a shit about it when the aliens show up, because I'm just going to be like, okay, cool. I feel like a lot of people are that way too. It's like they're full on talking about it and people don't give a shit.
No, they don't. But it's incredible because people have been so desensitized to everything that comes out of the media that doesn't press a hot button emotional. It's like the fucking Walking Dead. It's crazy. But, they announced during COVID that that off-world vehicles were, the Pentagon admitted to finding them, and no one batted an eye. Why? Because everybody was afraid for their lives. They don't give a shit about off-road vehicles,
Yeah.
But they got to roll this disclosure. If they're going to control the narrative, then they have to be the one that officially breaks it.
Yeah.
And they've been, embezzling and smuggling and laundering so much money for so long that it's gotten to the point where they have to start to bring some of this stuff to the books, because it's either that or get caught completely red-handed and risk repercussions, and they don't want to do that. But you're not going to get the people who are doing the criminal acts to investigate themselves. So
never.
Now we have the Space Force. Thank God. Thank God. the fuck would we do without
what
them?
would we do without them? They're here to protect us from beyond
So we
the
need
skies.
another armed forces. Just what we need, you know. And of course, Trump was propagandized into believing in the alien threat, as was Reagan,
Yeah.
who gave and allowed fucking an insane amount of money to be laundered into these secret space programs. Although Reagan was probably the last president. Obviously Bush knows. The Bushes are, you know, they've been around since Kennedy, so they know fucking everything.
Yep. You wonder where it's going to end up going. Like, how far is it going to go, and what is the end game with it? You know, and I think the fact that people haven't really lost their minds about it is then they start down different roads of division that they can possibly think of. I honestly think that's why we're seeing so much propaganda with the Palestine-Israel thing, is because it's like, okay, well, first we did, you know, police and Black Lives Matter. We spun people up about that. We tried to get people as worked up as we could during this vaccine thing and tried to make a dividing line between people on that. You know, we got the political thing. It's probably more polarized now than it's ever been. If you like Trump, you're a complete dirtbag. If you like Biden, you're brain dead. Like, so what else can we wind people up in this world about? Let's take one of the oldest conflicts that's currently still brewing in human history and fire that one back up again. And there's like this whole news report that one woman did about a lot of the footage that was shared by media outlets around the world, where the footage of the parachuters, the paratroopers coming in on that music festival and stuff, it was like from Egypt, like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that the media was saying, like, oh, there's the guys coming in to do that attack. And they're like, no, that was something else. There was like legit video game footage that they included in certain things. It was like, are you kidding me? Like, how much stuff of like this do people have to see before they just stop believing all of it and stop paying attention? And I don't know what the answer to that is, because a lot of people will hear what you and I are talking about and be like, what the fuck are they even talking about? I don't understand how people don't know about it at this point.
It's crazy. You know, I think you're either hip to it, a little hip to it, or completely oblivious. You know, like I had somebody comment on my post the other day, which literally all it does is detail the facts about the actual facts instead of the propaganda that was on the news about the hijackers, and about, you know, the fact that you had 19 people that supposedly boarded planes, although there is no name, none of their names were on any manifest. You know, we have zero footage of any of them on any surveillance camera in any airport, and there should be fucking hours. Now, how is that possible? Someone's like, this isn't true. I saw a video on the news and they showed me it. And I was like, yeah, dude, you saw a video that was of two of the hijackers at a different airport at a different time.
Yeah.
That's what they showed everyone. You know, that's the only thing they had. And even that didn't have a timestamp, which every airport does. You know, then they released a video a couple years later and said, oh, here's two of them, or here's a few of them together. And you had some dudes who kind of looked like some of the hijackers, but there was no, the video could have came from anywhere.
Right.
Like there was no, you know, it's like, that's called a CIA production, my friends. You know, like, why would this video conveniently come out? And then, and people made a good point and said, in 2001, almost all the cameras in America were time-lapse cameras.
Right.
They could shoot one frame per second. And this is a camcorder video that is continuously being shot. Anyone could buy a camcorder video, and this was obviously, there's no identifying marks on it. Just, it's like, and he's like, this is all bullshit, you know, because his idea of the truth is what he was told on the news. And
Right.
I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm not going to convince him of that. I can send him all the links in the world. You know, he's not going to be moved, but that people will come around when they're ready. That's the thing. They're going to continue to try to play their hand, which is a totalitarian fucking, you know, one world, you know, under a kind of police state, similar to what we see in China. And they're going to do that every way they can, whether it's war, whether it's crisis, famine. They're going to use the four horsemen to do that, because fear is part and parcel with their agenda. The only way we can go on is if we can save you. That's, you know, whether it's war, whether it's disease,
Climate,
whatever.
everything.
They need the emergency situation Without it, they have nothing.
Right.
And so you can rest assured that they're cooking something up. But every time they go to do this, more and more of the population says, wait a minute, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, how can you know the solution to a problem that you just told us started a week ago? That's not possible. You know what I mean? How do you know the answer if you just pose the question? Unless the answer, you already have it, which means you already fucking knew the question. You know what I mean? Like the nonsense with the medical intervention that they put forth. And I was like, what? And I had, coincidentally, ironically, synchronicity, I was knee deep studying the V word in 2019 and learning about everything that goes into that industry because I was suspicious of it.
Right.
I don't know what made me suspicious of it, but by the time fucking COVID came around, I was like, what are they? Don't people know that the average time it takes to create and safety test the V word is 10 years? Up until recently, it was 12 years. Then the average went down to 10 years. I was like, and they're all saying the same thing about this being a solution. This is absurd. But people are like, oh, thank God they're going to make a solution for us. Thank God. I can't wait to get it.
That last 90
big
seconds.
Money to get it first. You know? I was like, what? We're moving. We're getting the fuck out of New York City. This is insane.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. As many of you know, mental health is something that I take very seriously. That's why I've chosen to partner the podcast with BetterHelp. Their licensed therapists can help you identify what areas of your life you're having difficulty with and help you ride the ups and downs of life. I've personally used BetterHelp, and I have to say, for somebody who's experienced with the process of seeing therapists, BetterHelp's resources are beyond amazing. You can choose from their network of over 30,000 licensed professionals to find one that you vibe with. Want a male, female, specific ethnicity, certain religious background? BetterHelp lets you narrow it down that specifically so you can find the perfect therapist for your care. And you can easily change therapists at any time, which I have no intention of doing because my therapist, Bruce, is the man. I have amazing conversations with him. I leave our sessions not only feeling like I've taken a weight off my shoulders, but I leave the sessions with objectives to accomplish for the next appointment. You can choose video, audio, or chat sessions that all go right through the app, as well as journal entries that you can send right to your therapist so they know ahead of time what you might want to work on. They offer live webinars on a range of subjects, all of which adds to the toolbox for your mental well-being. Jump on the solution that millions are turning to. Visit betterhelp.com/live this life to get started and get 10% off your first month of therapy. That's betterhelp.com/live this life.
Where are you now? Like, where do you live now?
I'm in Georgia now.
You're in Georgia. So you were in New York City during the pandemic?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. What a change. A good friend of mine, if you ever listen to some of the shows, I just did an episode with him recently. His name is Ben Carroll. He's like an amazing sound healer. He was actually the lead guitarist of my favorite band, Raw. They were like a big band back in the early 2000s.
Oh, cool.
And we become close friends and stuff. And he's doing sound healing now. They lived in Maine. I live in Massachusetts. So I was able to meet up with him a few times in the last few years. And they just moved down to Florida, Georgia last year after him living in the Northeast. And he loves it. He absolutely loves it down there. He lives, like an hour or so outside of Atlanta.
Nice, man. Yeah, no, it's much, much better here. You know, my parents moved to Florida. I moved to Georgia. But just never going to be in a captive state with a bunch of fucking neurotic maniacs again, because they're gonna try this shit again. The question is, how far will they get with it?
Right.
Will people have the integrity and courage to stand up and say, we're not going to participate in nonsense? We're not going to buy into it, because if people had done that in 2020, there would have been no pandemic, period.
Right.
You take away the media in 2020 and you got just another year, 2021. Everything about it was propagandized ad nauseum. You don't even have, I mean, besides the ones they caused, it's just another year on Earth.
Right.
The respiratory illness, the typical respiratory, it's literally, it was not even higher than it would have been, I mean, after they got a hold of everyone with the protocols they had in place, they fucking buoyed the body count. But
oh yeah, the
besides
ventilators and
that,
everything else. Like so many studies have come out from Johns Hopkins too. There was a somebody who I heard recently resigned from Johns Hopkins and took a bunch of data and reported it. I stopped kind of paying attention to everything that had to do with that entire subject just because I
I
was
don't
so
blame you.
sick of hearing about it. But that one caught my ear. I was like, the guy came out and he had the whole, I wouldn't even quite call it a whistleblowing, but he brought forward a bunch of information about how the ventilators early on with people was blowing out their lungs, and they were blaming that.
They'll pretend like they didn't, like that was an accident.
Yeah.
They didn't know better, and it's I don't care for that subject either. That subject, it's a dead horse to me.
Yeah.
I don't care to talk about it either. And the forums we're on aren't the place to talk about it anyway.
It's true.
People are fucking, people are going to wake up and realize that they were conned and poisoned or not. It's on them to realize it. And I'm not a big fan of Darwin. I know all about him as well.
Yeah.
But situations like this, you're like, if you're hell bent on proving Darwin, had something to contribute to society, then I'm not the one to stop you.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yep.
That's on you. And unfortunately, you see that a lot of people are proving Darwin right. That's why we have all-cause mortality as high as it is and all that stuff.
Yeah, that blew my mind. That blew my mind about how 40% increase and stuff like that, and people wonder why we're not filling jobs around the country. It's just it's unreal. And that.
But don't worry, we're letting in a lot of people.
A whole bunch of people filling in the gaps. Jumping back to the UFO thing, what part of that do you feel is actually legitimate? It's like, at first I was extremely excited because I'm like, okay, these things are starting to show up a little bit more. We're starting to get more video. A lot of these things, like you could definitely tell that it's something terrestrial. Like it's something that obviously we've been working on. I've heard all these stories about how Lockheed Martin might actually have their own breakaway sort of, I wouldn't say society, but like their own, like the breakaway little force, because they're the ones who are developing, they're getting this technology if something does crash, and they're back engineering some of these things. And if they're working on this stuff and they're keeping it secret from the government who's giving it to them, at what point does the government completely get locked out of what it is that they're doing, Well,
the government per se, at least the old form of the government that had the semblance of sovereignty and independence back when Eisenhower was in, before Kennedy, Dwight, they had knowledge of it, and they lost control of it, and that was in part methodical because they love the idea of government funding these things, but they don't want to deal with government bureaucracy and control. They want to do what they want, and the government, Eisenhower wanted it into Area 51. And they said, I'm sorry, sir, you can't come in. This is a need to know basis. And he said, I'm the fucking president of the United States. Dwight was a 5-star general and he was known to have a temper. And when they told him he wasn't allowed in fucking, what is popularly known as Area 51, he was like, I'll come down there with the fucking 121st Airborne and we'll fucking blast the doors down. How about that? And they were like, okay. Well, we'll arrange something. And so they put everything away, put everything they were working on away. He knew what was there anyway, but they let him have his tour. And he warned Kennedy and he tried to warn the rest of the world. He tried to warn everyone what had happened. Beware the military industrial complex.
Yep. I remember that speech.
That includes the aerospace industry. And he said that for a reason, because he had been slapped in the face hard. And he told Kennedy, I have lost control of these, my earphones are dying. I've lost control of these programs. And Kennedy was hell-bent on reining them back in. One of the many other reasons he was knocked off. So, but your question again, I think was what do I think is, what was your exact question?
What do you think the end game is? And where do you think that's going? And on top of that one, do we actually have other societies, other civilizations coming here? What's us and what's them?
So the end game depends on who gets to set the agenda. We absolutely there's always been other societies here. There's other societies from civilizations that have come and gone that are underground for a reason, because things didn't work out well for them, and they stayed underground, and they were shown how to live underground. And the breakaway society that you're referring to, was it in part accessed and allowed to, they allowed the Germans to kind of join them at the end of World War II, really before World War II ended, because they saw what was happening. And they were happy to allow, fresh faces in. But some of these societies date back to like the last time we had this kind of rise to power and technology. But the government is well aware of the fact that the human hybrid is a collective of at least 22 very ancient and highly advanced civilizations from across the galaxy and other galaxies, not just the Milky Way, but Andromeda and many other ones. And that we are an experiment in peace and evolution. And the government was told all this, and they chose to keep that information from the people. Because with that information also came the offer of free energy, something that every evolved planet and society has for its people. Right. But J.P. Morgan and the fucking, hold on, let me put these away. There were people behind the government, even at that time, that were not interested in any way in free energy because they can't charge for it. And one of the ways they control the government as well as the people is through their fucking, all their energy industries. So that will come out. I believe that'll come out in our lifetime. We have a fleet of reverse engineered UFOs. We use them all the time. Okay. Like they see them all the time around bases. And we've learned how to down, ET craft. They get too close to the Earth, or I should say materialize too close to our planet. And we retrieve those crashes all the time. We've retrieved hundreds around the world over the last 50 years. And so we are known as a hostile race. And, that comes not just in part from us, but from the fact that, there was a deal made that Eisenhower made. He rejected the offer for free energy and evolution, and then was offered another deal for technology by a malevolent race of beings who did not have our best interests at heart, but that wanted to exploit the human DNA for their own, inkling. And they made a deal, technology for a certain quota of people that they could abduct, and they got double crossed because the people they were dealing with, the race they were dealing with, the more commonly known as the Greys, were not friendly to humanity, but were using humanity. But they saw an opportunity. America agreed and got other nations to sign on. And then when they got fucked over and realized that, okay, not only were they going way over their quota, but other races were coming in when they learned about the deal and abducting people without permission. And that's what Tucker Carlson was talking about the other day with Clayton Morris, when he was like, "Oh my God, I saw that," and he's talking about the fact that if people learn that the fucking government agreed to allow these malevolent race of beings to just abduct people off the planet and fly away with them, and the government said that's cool as long as we get your technology, then people are going to be very upset with the government. And that's when he was like, I can see now why they want to keep that secret. Yeah, no shit, buddy. Everyone can see why they want to keep it secret. It's in their own interest, but it doesn't mean it should be kept secret. And it doesn't mean that these beings are all in any way, shape, or form a threat, because the truth is they're not a threat. We're under protection, or we would be long gone. The only protection we need really is from ourselves. And so, after that, of course, with no remorse, we started learning how to down these craft, and we've crashed many UFOs and craft, and taken the technology, put it in our collection. We fly around in our own fucking UFOs. They're interstellar. They can go. We've been outside the solar system for years. I mean, we mastered gravity in 1954. You know, Ben Rich at Lockheed Martin wrote it in his journal. He told people who asked that we have correspondence, you know, between him and the government being like, I want to come down and take a look at the UFOs. And he's like, which ones? Ours or theirs? Man-made or ETs?
That's wild.
You know, and you see it's all in his handwriting. And he's admitted it. So it's like, it's not a secret, man. It's just people don't believe in the secrecy because they don't know the motivation for it. They think it's about keeping the truth from us. It's not. The truth must be kept from us only insofar as it allows them to continue to control and monopolize the money and the power. And that's all they care about. You know, they don't care that you know about ET. They don't even care if you know about our history. But you find out the craft that ET wrote in on is simple technology that every person on Earth can have free of charge forever and ever. And they got a problem. They got a big fucking problem. That's an independent people who can truly evolve into the spacefaring race that we will evolve to eventually. I don't know if it'll be this iteration of humans or not, you know, hopefully it will be, but we're in a situation, these next 10 years are going to be very, very telling. And it's going to be a back and forth, I think, between the so-called white hats and the black hats, but really more about the people and whether people can break free of their fucking slave-like tendencies and willing to be complacent and realize that there is no one greater than themselves, you know, and that nobody has authority over them. Nobody. Authority is a complete illusion. I mean, and America has, and the world has most people hoodwinked into believing in this illusion.
Yeah.
But if you own property, then why do you go to jail if you don't pay the fucking taxes?
Yeah.
That's not ownership.
It's not.
That's bullshit. You know, this country was founded to be something different than that. But they've got everyone convinced that it wasn't, and everyone has forgotten. So my whole thing is, if we can wake up in time, we can take back this heaven of a planet that we live on that has more than enough for everyone. And we already have the technology where we don't have to burn another fossil fuel. We can all have a fucking Hare Krishna over climate change. It's all obsolete. It's all bullshit. Do you think at the highest level they don't know that climate change is a problem that they know about the technology in the highest circles, and they're keeping it from us? Technology that would make climate change the same problem as horse shit was in the fucking before the Ford Model T came out. Everyone had a world meeting. What are they going to do with all the horse shit? The cities are fucking as rank and as disgusting as anyone could imagine. What are we going to do? They got all the minds in the world together. This was back right before Ford put the Model T on the assembly line. And guess what that did? It solved the horse shit problem. Okay?
Yeah, it's true.
Well, we can solve the horse shit problem today too, but the technology has to be allowed out. You know, I think it will be, because consciousness is collective as well as non-local, and people are solving for Einstein's theory of relativity. I know people who are. I mean, your listeners may hear this and bat an eye, but they can go and look into the work of Nassim Haramein.
Yeah,
they can look into the work of Robert Grant. You know, these people are geniuses in quantum physics, you know, mathematics, and they're doing what Tesla did. They're solving for the theory of relativity. And when you solve for gravity, you solve for space-time, and you no longer have a problem. You can move in ways you couldn't imagine. You could build something so big that no one knows how you move the rocks. You could, you know, if you have this kind of technology, you can be here and there and everywhere. So I have hope that, you know, information is it's bottlenecking right now, but these people, they're smart enough to know that if you try to go the way of Rockefeller and patent it, you're fucking dead in the water.
Yeah.
Everybody who's ever tried to, you know, patent their super engine, hydrogen, whatever, you know, they don't survive. No. So someone has to be, you know, worldly enough to create this and put it out in the public before it can be hidden and tarnished and discredited. And people are trying to do that right now. So that would change things, huh? That would be amazing.
It would. That's the world that I would love to see things shift into, just because it sounds from some of the people who claim to be UFO insiders, and you got the former Israeli security chief who admitted that there's a federation, and there's a whole bunch of people. It's hard to separate the bullshit, though. There's some people who are out there with fantasy, and it's hard to separate that. But just the concepts, just asking the what if questions. What if these people are actually telling the truth? And they say that people who have actually had contact and who are government insiders who have had these moments of contact, they say that life is, it's prevalent throughout the universe, but planets ours are rare. Like, we do have a rarity as far as the abundance of life that we have here. So you would think that the people who are in the know, who are these elites, who are guarding this, they're holding it for themselves, they're keeping this hierarchy for the sake of keeping the masses at bay, are they shooting themselves in the foot? Because if this place doesn't make it, no one does. But there's also that mindset. It's like, well, they don't really care about this place too much, because there's a lot of them that realize there's a way off this rock. They're already using technologies to get the hell out of here. And, the masses that are here, they're just serving a system similar to like what they would have been if they, you were back in ancient times, where you had a group of slaves that were actually building massive monuments to you and doing all the grunt work, and they did it for the sake of not getting whipped. Only difference here is there's no whips and chains other than the dollars and bills and coins you have in your pocket. Like, that's the modern form of slavery that they put into place, where people will just build these things because they're getting something comfortable out of it.
It's a double-edged sword, because in a very real way, the human being, our evolution was advanced, and kind of there was an intercession that happened when, and the government is also aware of this in many ways, but we were already an incredible mix of all these advanced species, but there was a race of beings that needed gold to save their atmosphere. And they came down here and they were mining it themselves. And this planet and the rotation of our Earth and our gravity and our three-dimensional lives was not very kind to them. And, if you're not from a planet, it's very difficult to survive on that planet, particularly when it's nothing like the one your physicality was evolved to be in. And so they were trying with very little progress over hundreds of years to get this gold out, and they were like, fuck this. They were highly advanced technologically, but not so much, not like the races that created us. And they interceded, and they saw the primate, and they saw the spark of life in the primate, the sentience there, the seed of sentience. And they said, let's just evolve ourselves to fucking, some beings that could fucking work here for us. So they took their DNA and they mixed it with the DNA that was here, and they created this version of human. And this version of human was bred to be, let's say, follow the leader.
Yeah.
I don't want to say slaves, because there was part of our DNA that was very much not in that, bred to be that. But we have that in us. And isn't it fucking obvious? I mean, Absolutely. Look at the way we have used slaves throughout all of our understanding of history. There's been slaves and slavers. Okay. Yep. There's something in our DNA that is very familiar with this system. Okay. And it comes from these beings. Now, these beings, they got the gold that they needed, and then they were fucking told to hit the fucking road, and they were going to, destroy everyone. But like all beings, some of them were good, and some of them said, you cannot destroy these creatures, leave them be. And so they left, and they left us be. And so we, after that, there was a very strict rule that was put into place, at least, according to everything I've studied and learned and intuited, that unless you got fucking relations, stay the fuck away from Earth. You know what I mean? Like, and there were about, like I said, 20 races that did have direct relations, all of them benevolent, all of them very concerned about what was going to happen now. And, that we had societies prop up, Lemuria, Atlantis. These are not fables. These are real places,
Right.
with highly advanced technology. And in fact, they didn't make it. The remnants of them were scattered, many of them underground. But this race of humans is probably the third civilization that has achieved advanced technology and kind of a worldwide community. And this is a much different iteration than the previous ones. But the previous ones didn't make it because they fucking went to war, and they destroyed themselves. And that's also, in the ground, we can see that. We were like, hey, wait a minute. Why does it look like there was a nuclear blast fucking 55,000 years ago? What happened?
Yeah.
That's an unmistakable signature. It's
Why are we
different
finding,
than
why are we finding like hammers in
exactly
rock? Like those are like, there's ancient artifacts that don't make any sense at all.
Oh, lots of
always the narrative.
It does. And it also speaks to the fact that, this notion of time that we all buy into about time being linear is not necessarily true. You mastered gravity and you mastered time. And so while, I'm not saying that time travel is something that happens, but it's not something that is impossible. There's ethics that advanced societies naturally evolve to adopt, when they get to a certain point, which is why we're fucking stuck on Earth where we belong. Ships can't even fly by us. We're like, take them out, we're like, all right, Johnny, got another one, call the crash unit.
Yeah, go scoop them up. Let's see if we can make this thing work.
And fucking oftentimes
it's unreal.
The being survived the crash.
Yeah.
And we've spent years with beings in captivity and acquired a lot of information, about where they're from and what we are, and but they don't let that information out. But it's well documented. The United States has had two different. They call them Ebens.
Ebens, yeah.
No, evolved. I forget the.
Was it extraterrestrial biological entity?
I forget the acronym for them. But they learned a lot from those two, and they only lived for like 2-3 years. Other ones we've had have been, been rescued. They don't break them out. They could beam them up. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They're here 1 minute and they're like, bye, and they're gone. I mean, Star Trek and all these technologies. Yeah, people have great imaginations, but the truth is that a lot of them have been read into some of these accounts and learned what these people learned, talking to these incredible beings from not our planet and their technology. And so Star Wars and fucking Star Trek and these movies, yeah, they have great imaginations, but these stories come from somewhere,
right.
And there are, battles that have taken place and beings that are malevolent. And it's not, but at the same time, Earth is under the highest protection because we are, this incredible experiment. And when you evolve to a certain point, then you have technology at your disposal that no one else does. And you can see what's coming for the most part. And that's why Earth will never be, simply invaded by an alien threat. It would have happened long ago. It would have happened to any of our civilizations. This planet was put in a certain part of the Milky Way, which is out of the way, very remote location. And it's under watch all the time. I mean, that's what the moon is for. If your listeners want to look at how unique our moon is, even in our solar system, you'll find there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the observable universe, nothing like our moon.
Nope.
No planetary body acts like our moon because our moon is not a natural planetary body. It's an incredible space station, well designed to look like a moon. And they can look at the depth of the craters and see
that's
how
the part that blows my mind.
The variation is not there the way physics would and should allow for. So what's going on,
Yeah, get these massively huge craters that should be, they should have a certain depth to them by their circumference. They shouldn't all be a similar shallow depth. For ones that are, they're right. Smaller, only a couple miles across. Then you have other ones that are 3, 4, 5 miles across. They're all the same depth. Like there was a bottom, like there was an impenetrable surface. And then
like there's the stories about when the satellites crashed into the not satellites, but the spacecraft that crashed into the moon and it rang like a bell, and
Yeah,
civilizations that have
it was
stories,
recorded.
yeah. And the civilizations that have stories about the time before the moon, and that there was the potentials of the Great Flood stories, that so many civilizations around the entire planet actually have those Great Flood stories, that if a body like that were to show up, I mean, it already pulls on the oceans right now and creates a huge bulge that we know as the tide. Like, imagine if that thing just showed up out of nowhere, what kind of chaos that would have caused. And these civilizations have those stories from way back then. It's the moon fascinates me. The whole moon landing and the moon, what that involves, like, is that did it get brought here? Because it's too big for this planet, and it's
way too big.
It's put in perfect place that it's what 400 times smaller than the sun, but it's 400 times closer.
Oh, there's so many fucking anomalies.
So much stuff with it.
And there's a reason why, we never went back. And it has nothing to do with money or technology or, the fact is we got there and they were like, sorry, fella, all fool. Don't come unannounced again, okay, shithead? Bye-bye now. Really, it's that simple. And then it was all a big cover-up from there. And people say, well, we never went to the moon. Well, all this, misinformation was then planted to cover up the fact that we were not allowed to go back, And when we do go back, finally, it's going to be very interesting to see how they continue to try to make excuses about why they can't go. They're going to continue to do that because the moon is fucking occupied, man. The moon's been occupied, and there are representatives of this planet who go and frequent the moon often, as much as they want. I mean, it's a hop, skip, and jumping away. It literally take them fucking, an hour to get there. It's not far by any means. And there's constant activity around the moon, in and out of the moon. I mean, anybody who has and can afford a real telescope can watch the moon. You watch the moon long enough, you're going to see fucking ships coming and going from it all day.
It's crazy.
It literally, but no one looks up, and no one has most people don't have the technology to just observe the moon. But the people who do are like, hey, is anyone else seeing this? And people are like, oh, it's fake. It's AI. It's special effects. No, it's not. It's just a fucking really good telescope. And that's what's going on in the moon. It's what's been going on in the moon. But we've been lied to for so long, no one believes anything. It's like, it's crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. That's for sure. But, so I've had David Icke on my podcast. We had a very interesting. I love David. He's a fucking warrior. A warrior of light, if there ever was one. You can find that episode in my library. I've had Bruce Lipton on.
I listened to that one. I listened to Bruce Lipton was one. I was actually amazed that you were able to get him, because Bruce Lipton is massive, and I'm not putting your show down at all. Your show is, it's big. It's got a lot of exposure. Like I have the access to some of the charts around the world and stuff, and like you're charting way up there. But I'm like, wow, Bruce Lipton is one of the most well-known people who's in the field of consciousness and everything else. Like, that was an amazing interview. Like, he is brilliant.
Thank you, brother.
You asked some amazing questions of him. Like, he's smart, but you were hanging right there, being able to pull that information out of him. It was a fascinating one. If any of the listeners have not heard that one, I'm going to link that one too. In addition to the JFK 1 and 2, the Bruce Lipton episode that you did was phenomenal.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, I really thought that one would. I don't know if it's because, maybe if it was an in-person interview, it would have tracked more, but everyone who listens to it really enjoys it. And Bruce is an incredible mind. I've met him a few times. I worked on him for so long. And then finally he was like, all right, I'm here. I learned so much from that man. Let's see, who else have I had on that I would highly recommend? Billy Carson was a very, very interesting interview. He was on my podcast. I don't know if your listeners might know who Billy Carson is. He was just on Sean Ryan, actually, which is another podcaster who's kind of blown up. He's a military guy.
Yeah, Sean Ryan's show is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so he had Billy on. Billy was talking a mile a minute on that podcast.
As he does.
Yeah, as he does. God, if you're interested in archaeology, I had Michael Cremo on. He wrote the book Forbidden Archaeology. I'm going to have. I'm working on Dr. Stephen Greer, who is
he's amazing.
Been called the father of the disclosure movement.
I wish we would have dove into him a little bit during this episode, just because I've got some questions about some theories I've heard about him as far as controlled descent and everything goes. But I think he's brilliant. And I'm also wondering, he's supposedly getting in touch with the benevolent ones, the good ones that are here to actually do some good stuff. How's he doing that versus,
I can tell you all about that. I mean, let's talk again, because I can tell you it's something that you can do. It's something your listeners can learn to do. And then you guys can decide for yourself whether he is selling something and full of shit, or if he's actually, figured out how everyday people can make contact with these beings, and when it's safe for them, and they will show up. They will show up and connect with you and say, if you're ready, contact is there to be made. All you need is an open heart, and to let go of your fears and I've done it. I've done it with him. I've been under the stars with him, and I've seen dozens of crafts show up. And you can connect with them with your consciousness first, and then they show up. And sometimes they're leaving, and you're like, wait, don't go. And then they'll come back. You just know that you're connected, just like you know that you're talking to me right now. Right. You know what I mean? It's not, it's like, oh my God, did that just, afterwards you're like, holy shit, but you don't doubt what you saw and felt and what you understood. And, it's all there. He's definitely, a man chock full of integrity. And I'd love to tell you all about him and how to make, do the CE5 protocols, close encounters of the fifth kind, which are human initiated contact. Anyone can do it. We all, like I said, we're all a product of some of the most advanced and renowned races in this galaxy and beyond. Okay. And so in a way, and it's not wrong to say or think of ourselves as kind of intergalactic royalty. And of course, that makes us the target of some jealousy and some races that, don't like the kind of treatment and, spectatorship that we get. But at the same time, you have every right to make contact. You're a citizen of this universe, and you can. And if you don't believe it, why not try it? Why not see for yourself? Because the interaction is beautiful. It's an incredible spiritual interaction, because these beings are very advanced, but it's nice to touch in with these benevolent beings that, that care about whether we make it or not, unlike the people who are governing us.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're trying in every way they can to help us. But free ourselves, but they cannot intervene. They cannot land on the White House and be like, "Hey, everyone, these motherfuckers are lying to you." No, they have people like me and you trying to get that message across. But we have free will. That's part of the deal. Okay, that's part of the creative spark.
It's fundamental,
and they have to respect that. That means it comes with good and bad. Free will you can also use to manipulate, obviously.
True.
So, but I encourage everyone to, have an open mind about these things. Don't jump to conclusions, but find out how you can see and hear as much as you can and learn for yourself what the truth about people are, the truth about an experience is. Because, if you had told me 20 years ago that I could sit down under the stars, close my eyes, open my heart, and put myself into a meditative state. And then when I look up, I'm going to be looking at these blue lighted, incredible crafts. And I didn't eat any acid, mushrooms, or fucking hallucinogen. I would be like, how much acid and mushrooms did you eat before you tried to sell me on this bullshit, man? I would have been like, get the fuck out. I would have never believed it.
Right.
But I experienced it now. So I can tell you, it's real. I'm not crazy. I'm not, insane. I don't hallucinate. I know what I saw and felt. And I was there with 100 other people who saw and felt the same thing.
And there's a lot of people who go to these seminars, his C5 conferences. I mean, it's a huge thing now. They sell out. So, I mean, it's definitely becoming a thing. And obviously the powers that be are trying to stop him. So immediately right there, that just raises your red flag.
That's a big thing. And the fact that he's alive, and I know how many attempts have been made on his life
and people that were close to him. He's got wicked survivor's remorse. Like he breaks down and cries whenever it comes up. Like he's lost people that were close to him and that were trying to defend him and stuff like that. And he's lost people.
They hit him with everything but the kitchen sink, but he found a way through it. Yeah. I know all about that too, but we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, let's
do it. A much more spiritual,
absolutely,
let's say, celestial conversation.
Yeah.
I hope that your listeners enjoyed the conversation we did have, and I hope it wasn't too dark and apocalyptic for them. But
I don't think so.
If you guys want to check out my podcast, who have stayed with us this long, first of all, God bless you. The name of my podcast is Far Out with Faust, and it's on YouTube, and you can download it. It's also on Rumble. We make sure we put a lot of love and care into the videos. So if you're into watching, all the videos are, the podcasts are complemented with a lot of visual effects. And I put out a short every day, and we have a new series we're working on called Far Out Forensics. And it's going to be like 10 to 20 minute episodes. I'm using a green screen, and I'm going to be diving deep into some of these different conspiracy theories and events that have happened, and kind of just streamline it and give people something they can walk away with and be like, holy fuck, did you know? Yeah. That's coming out soon. That's going to be on my YouTube channel.
Nice.
And, I'm on Instagram as well. That one is called The One, like The One, Faust Checho, my last name, Checho. So you could find me there too, ranting and raving.
and we'll link every one of his socials and everything he's talking about in the show description and everything, so you guys can find him and go check out the social media for his for all the links that we're going to put down there, because the shorts that he puts out are nice little sound bites of everything that we're talking about, along with some visuals. You do a phenomenal job with some of the short stuff that you post, and it's definitely something that's eye-catching. It gets people's attention enough to maybe dig in a little bit deeper. And that's what I think eliminates that cognitive dissonance. It's not when someone's speaking to them, it's when something speaks to them when they read it and they actually get into the nitty gritty of it all. So keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, brother.
You're awakening people like an avalanche. So stay at it. The world needs people like you getting the job done,
Awesome, brother. I feel the same about you. I appreciate you. I love seeing you whenever you jump in my lives. I love seeing you. I always tell people, check out your podcast.
I know. I heard you do that, man. I appreciate that too.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you, man. So you let me know if you want to do it again. We'll have a different conversation
for sure
next time. Yeah. But I appreciate your time, bro. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm honored.
If you are a conscious thought leader, an expert on inspiration, or have your own amazing story to tell about how you manifested your best life, we want you on the show. You can connect with us by writing to connect@livethislife.org. That's CONNECT@livethislife.org. Or you can reach out to us through the show's Calendly page at calendly.com/livethislife. And be sure to check out everything going on with the podcast at livethislife.org.